For 34 years, a mother's voice was silenced. Her daughter grew up without answers. Her killer walked free, carrying a terrible secret. But in November 2025, everything changed when witnesses who had stayed silent for over 3 decades finally spoke up, and their words shattered a wall of silence that had protected a murderer for a generation. This is the story of how the truth, no matter how long buried, can still find its way to the surface. It was September 16, 1991, a warm evening in Arlington, Texas. 25-year-old Cynthia Gonzalez kissed her 6-year-old daughter goodbye and left her home to meet a client. Cynthia worked as an adult entertainer, running her own business she had proudly named Beauty and the Beast. She was a young mother trying to build a better life, a woman described by those who knew her as caring, loving, and full of life. That night she never came home. When Cynthia's ex-husband reported her missing the next day, Arlington police immediately suspected foul play. Her car was found abandoned on Cedar Springs Terrace, just over a mile from where a witness had seen it parked at a car wash between 9 and 11:45 the previous night. The discovery sent chills through investigators. This wasn't a woman who had simply disappeared. Something terrible had happened. 5 days later, on September 22nd, the worst fears were confirmed. Cynthia's body was discovered on private property in rural Johnson County, dumped like garbage in an isolated area. She had been shot multiple times, and her body was already decomposing under the brutal Texas sun. Investigators had to use her fingerprints to confirm her identity. A vibrant young mother had been erased from the world, leaving behind a little girl who would grow up haunted by questions no one could answer. Detectives worked the case hard in those early months. They followed leads, interviewed witnesses, and pieced together the final hours of Cynthia's life. And very quickly, one name kept surfacing in their investigation, a name that would haunt this case for the next 34 years. Janie Perkins. She was Cynthia's friend, or at least that's what everyone thought. But beneath the surface of their friendship lurked something dark and dangerous. The two women shared more than just friendly conversation. They shared a romantic partner, a man who would become the catalyst for murder. Just weeks before Cynthia's death, this man had made a choice that would seal her fate. He told Janie Perkins their relationship was over. He was leaving her to be with Cynthia. Rejection is a powerful emotion, and for some it becomes a deadly one. When detectives questioned Perkins in the 1990s, red flags emerged everywhere. She had no alibi for the night Cynthia disappeared. She couldn't explain where she was or what she was doing during those critical hours. When investigators asked her to take polygraph tests, she agreed, but she failed every single one. Even more disturbing were the statements Perkins made during those interviews. She told detectives she was glad Cynthia was dead. She admitted she had thought about killing Cynthia herself or having someone else do it for her. These weren't the words of an innocent woman grieving a friend. These were the words of someone harboring dark satisfaction at another person's violent end. Yet despite all these warning signs, despite the failed polygraphs and the chilling admissions, Janie Perkins was never charged. Polygraph results aren't admissible in court, and without physical evidence linking her to the crime scene or the murder weapon, prosecutors couldn't move forward. Perkins maintained her innocence, and the case, despite its promising leads, went cold. Years turned into decades. Cynthia's daughter, Jessica Roberts, grew up without her mother. She celebrated birthdays and graduated from school and lived her life always wondering who had stolen her mother away and why they had never been brought to justice. The file on Cynthia Gonzalez sat in a box somewhere in the Arlington Police Department, another unsolved murder in a city that, like so many others, didn't have the resources for a full-time cold case unit. Detectives would occasionally pull the file, review it between active investigations, but nothing new ever emerged. The case seemed destined to remain forever unsolved. But then, in the fall semester of 2025, something remarkable happened. The Arlington Police Department formed an unprecedented partnership with the University of Texas at Arlington's Department of Criminology and Criminal Justice. Selected students in an advanced criminology course were given something extraordinary: real cold case files to investigate. They received access to all the reports, all the witness statements, all the evidence collected over the years, everything except the physical evidence itself. 3 cold cases were distributed among the student groups. One of those cases was the murder of Cynthia Gonzalez. The students approached the case with fresh eyes, unburdened by the assumptions and dead ends that had frustrated investigators for decades. They began asking questions, lots of questions. And one name kept drawing their attention: Janie Perkins. Why was she never charged despite all the circumstantial evidence? What had the original detectives missed? The students compiled their questions and sent them to the Arlington detectives working alongside them. Those questions prompted the detectives to do something they hadn't done in years. They went back through the entire case file, page by page, statement by statement, looking for anything that might have been overlooked. And that's when they found it. Buried in the files were witness statements that had never been properly followed up on. Statements from people who claimed that Janie Perkins had admitted her involvement in Cynthia's murder. These weren't vague accusations. According to these witnesses, Perkins had provided specific, verifiable details about the killing, details that aligned perfectly with the evidence collected at the crime scene and during the autopsy. The witnesses had been there all along, their statements documented but never fully investigated. For reasons lost to time, their accounts had been set aside, filed away, forgotten. When current detectives compared these witness statements to the physical evidence, everything clicked into place. The details matched. The timeline aligned. The confession Perkins had allegedly made to these witnesses contained information that only someone involved in the crime could have known. Detectives now believed that Perkins had either directly participated in Cynthia's kidnapping and murder, or had facilitated it, arranging for others to carry out the violence while she orchestrated from the shadows. Either way, she was responsible for a young mother's death. Armed with this new analysis of old evidence, detectives consulted with the Tarrant County District Attorney's Office. After reviewing everything, prosecutors agreed there was probable cause to file charges. On November 6, 2025, more than 34 years after Cynthia Gonzalez was murdered, a warrant was issued for the arrest of 63-year-old Janie Perkins on one count of capital murder. The U.S. Marshals North Texas Fugitive Task Force located her in Azle, Texas, and took her into custody. The woman who had evaded justice for over 3 decades was finally in handcuffs. The announcement sent shockwaves through Arlington and the true crime community. Police Chief Al Jones stood before reporters and cameras, visibly moved by the breakthrough. He praised the university's students whose curiosity and dedication had reignited a case everyone thought was dead. He never expected their partnership to yield results so quickly, certainly not in the program's very first semester. But it had. And now, a family that had waited 34 years for answers finally had them. Jessica Roberts, who was only 6 years old when her mother was murdered, spoke at the press conference, her voice thick with emotion. She was grateful, she said, for the students at the University of Texas at Arlington, for the time they had spent, for the effort they had put into her mother's case. For the first time in her adult life, she had hoped that her mother's killer would face justice. The little girl who had grown up without a mother could finally begin to heal. This case teaches us something profound about the nature of justice and truth. Witnesses who had information about Cynthia's murder stayed silent for over 30 years. We don't know why. Perhaps they were afraid. Perhaps they didn't think anyone would believe them. Perhaps they convinced themselves it wasn't their business, or that someone else would come forward. But their silence allowed a killer to remain free for more than 3 decades. It took fresh eyes, the determined questions of college students, and a renewed commitment from law enforcement to finally break through that wall of silence. The Cynthia Gonzalez case is a reminder that cold cases are never truly closed. Evidence doesn't disappear. Witnesses don't forget. And somewhere in those dusty files, in those old statements and overlooked details, the truth is waiting to be discovered. It might take years, it might take decades. But it's there. Technology advances, investigative techniques improve, and sometimes all it takes is someone willing to ask the right questions. If you've been moved by Cynthia's story, if you believe that every victim deserves justice no matter how much time has passed, then please subscribe to this channel. We bring you real cases, real investigations, and real stories about the pursuit of truth. Hit that like button if you appreciate the work that law enforcement, students, and dedicated investigators do to solve these cases. And stay connected with us because there are thousands of cold cases still waiting to be solved. Thousands of families still waiting for answers. Your engagement helps us share these important stories and keeps the conversation about justice alive. Together, we can make sure that no victim is ever forgotten and that the truth, no matter how long it takes, will always find its way home.